In this video, we take a look at the Sculpt mode in Blender 2.8, what has changed compared to previous versions, what stayed the same, and very important, at the end of the video, I share an idea on how we all can help to massively improve Blender Sculpt mode. So definitely watch till the end or just watch the last part of this video. You can also check the chapter marks in the video description. So enjoy! Hi everyone, Zach here, thanks for stopping by. If you're new to my channel, here I share the best tips and tricks to boost your Blender 3D skills and create beautiful 3D art. Alright, in order to follow this video, you have to download Blender 2.8, but it's still in alpha, so there's no official stable version to download. You have to download the latest build from blender.org. In order to do this, follow the link in the video description. Before we get started, two things. First of all, I reopened my Patreon page. That means if you love my channel and my videos, and if you benefit from this and want to give something back, support this channel here. This is a perfect opportunity. If you want to learn more, check the link in the video description. And this video here is supported by Chris Plush from cgmasters.net with his awesome new Master Car Creation in Blender course. So if you ever dreamed of creating your own awesome looking cars in Blender, this is definitely the best course out there you can have. Chris is an absolutely master in creating cars. It looks just perfect. I mean, just look at the trailer and it speaks for itself. So if this is something for you, things get even better because Chris is offering 10% off for my audience here. So if you want to grab this course with 10% off, check the link in the video description. So thanks a lot, Chris, for this nice offer, and you guys have a lot of fun modeling awesome cars. And please watch the last part of this video where I propose you an idea on how to make Blender Sculpt mode better. So don't miss this, it's really important. And now, let's get started. So I just downloaded the latest version of Blender 2.8 and this is what it looks like if we open it. So in general, if you use Blender for a long time, it's still familiar, you can still find everything more or less. There are just a few changes on the user interface and the theme looks a bit different. But in general, I think if you use Blender for a long time now, you will quickly find everything you need. So first thing I want to do is I want to open a dragon I'm currently working on in Blender 2.79 and I want to open this here in Blender 2.8. And there's a little thing you have to take care about. So I go to File, Open, then navigate to the folder with the blend file, click on the blend file, and over here disable load UI, so it will not load the user interface which is stored in the blend file. Since the user interface in 2.79 is a bit different, this can cause some troubles, so definitely disable this and then click on Open Blend File. So as you can see now the model was loaded, but the whole interface stays as it is. So this dragon here, as mentioned, completely sculpted in Blender is the project I'm currently working on. When I'm completely done with this, I will probably make a video about the creation process. So stay tuned about this. So I will not talk more about this dragon in general here, because now we want to take a look at sculpting and the sculpt mode in general in Blender 2.8. So one thing, when you open a file from an older Blender version, we don't have this old layer system anymore. We now have this collections, which is more like a system like in Photoshop and so on. So you can have more or less unlimited layers and Blender will automatically convert the old layers into this new collections. So as you can see, I had 2 layers in my scene and Blender has created 2 collections. If you had disabled some of those layers, you can enable them by clicking on this symbol over here or the eye. So if you want to switch to sculpt mode now, one way to do it is by selecting an object, click up here, object mode, and switch to sculpt mode. So now I'm in sculpt mode, but I can also do it quicker by pressing Ctrl Tab, and then I can click on object mode or sculpt mode and all the other modes as well. So let's switch back to object mode. But you can see then I have to click on this. So pressing Ctrl Tab and then I click on this. But you can do it even quicker by just holding down and not releasing Ctrl Tab. And then move the mouse in the certain direction, like here object mode, and then release both buttons. And this way you can quickly switch between the different modes. But in Blender 2.8, there's even a quicker way to enter sculpting mode, or that the user interface is set up for sculpting. And this we can simply do by clicking up here on the sculpting tab. You can see we now have different workspaces for different areas in the production. And let's switch over to sculpting and see what it looks like. So first of all, you notice we are directly in sculpt mode. The viewport looks a bit different. I will talk about this soon. And we have this thing which looks like the tool shelf over here. So first of all, let's talk about the user interface, because this is probably, besides the viewport, the biggest change, but just in terms of arrangement, not in terms of tools. So let's press Ctrl space to enter the full screen mode of the 3D view to see what belongs to the 3D view. First of all, you notice that the tool shelf thing over here is pretty small. There are not all these tools and options we had before. Now here are just the sculpting brushes listed, as you can see. And if I move the mouse closer here, you can see it is still this kind of tool shelf, but it is invisible right now. And with this double arrow, I can pull it to the right. And you can see that the icons will arrange differently. And if I pull it even more, you can also see the names of the different brushes. Then you can see we have these little arrows down here. If you click and hold left click, you can switch to different brushes. If you hold your mouse over this with tooltips enabled, you can see also what shortcuts you can press. And shortcuts is a good topic because the standard shortcuts I use are the numbers, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to change the brushes in Blender 2.7, but here this is not possible at the moment. I'm not sure if they will add this later on, but right now it's not possible. So you have to work with these shortcuts, or in some cases you can see, like here, shortcut is space and then 5. That means you have to press space. And here's something new as well. You can see we have all the brushes right at the position of the mouse, which is pretty cool. You just click space and click on the brush you want to have. Or in this case, this was the 5. You press space 5 and then it will switch to the brush. Another thing what you can do is to click on a brush, right click on it and click on add to quick favorites. And then if you press Q, you have it listed here. Somehow the icons are not working at the moment, but for me it worked before, and sometimes it just creates this set tool by name, whatever. But you can see down here we have this clay. But also I didn't find a way right now to save the quick favorites after closing and reopening Blender. But I'm pretty sure they will add this option later on. So you can also press T to disable this completely if you like, or as shown before, you can also make this smaller. Then all this stuff which you previously find in the tool shelf is now available up here. You can see we have the brush options. We can also switch the brushes over here. Radius and strengths. Here still the standard shortcuts work. F for changing the radius and Shift F for changing the strength. Then we have the overlay option, texture option, stroke, curve, and so on. And over here we have dynamic topology, more options, and the symmetry log option. So in general, it's pretty cool because we can work in full screen more or less and have still access to all these options here. You can even close this if you like. But the downside of this is that you have to click on this option to see what's going on here. And in older versions of Blender, we could always have the tool shelf on and see what options we have there. So if we, for example, want to see what's going on here, we always have to click on this. And as I heard, some people don't like this behavior. So the developers added a new tab basically in the properties editor. And this is this thing over here. So this, what you can see here, is just a second window, second editor with the properties enabled. And if you click on this, you can see it looks exactly like the tool shelf before with all the options we had before. But as I hear, this is just a compromise. So it can be that this will be changed completely or removed completely, and the way it works in general will be changed again. So yeah, but this is how it looks right now. So then one big change over here is this new Gizmo. This is basically here to navigate in the viewport, which might be useful for beginners. You can also click and hold on this thing to rotate. And you can also click on the axis to enter the direct views from above, side, and so on. And I think this can be quite useful if you're using a pen for sculpting and don't want to move your hand away from the graphics tablet to click on the numpad, for example. And then this can be pretty useful to quickly switch between the different views here. But if you don't like the whole thing, you can click on overlay and disable the gizmo up here, and then it disappears. So, and this leads us to these options up here, which are also new. And maybe let's switch back to modeling for now. So first of all, the overlays. Here you have the options to disable different things like the grid, the axis. You can even disable the 3D cursor, which is pretty cool because you don't really need it in sculpt mode. And if you just want to disable all these helping objects, lines and stuff in the viewport, you can simply click on this button and everything will be disabled. So, and this is pretty cool because for sculpting especially, you don't need all this stuff. You just need the pure model you can work on. So now let's take a look at the shading options over here. First of all, make sure that this solid mode is enabled. And then we can click on shading. And here we have different options like the flat view, the studio with different lighting situation. But right now I just want to talk about the matte caps. So the matte caps are pretty cool because they are kind of a material slash lighting which will be added to the whole scene. This will not be rendered, it's just for viewing the model or understanding the shape of the model better. And in order to change this, you can click on this and just change between different matte caps. So then right now you can see that although I switch to this green one, down here this is still brown. And that's because down here we have the option to color this. So if I press on single, you can see I can either just use the color of the matte cap itself, as you can see, or down here I can color this with a custom color, which is pretty cool because now you can really customize the matte caps. You can also invert the matte cap if you like. And then we have more options. We can go to material. Then if I select an object here, go to material, we have this viewport display. And then if I switch the color from this material over here, you can see this will also mix with the matte cap. In this way, we can basically add different colors to different objects, which can be useful because in the single mode, everything has the same color. But there's also another option, and this is the random one, which basically views every separate object in a different color. And this is really cool because now you actually can see that this dragon is not only one big object, it consists out of multiple parts. And this is now really distinguishable, as you can see. So let's switch back to a single mode, switch this color to white, and then we have just the color of this matte cap. And now let's check the other options down here. We can change the color of the background. Right now, theme is enabled. That means we are using the color which is enabled for this theme. Then we can switch to world. That means we have to go over here to the world settings, viewport display. And here we can change this to a custom color. But it's even simpler. We just can click on viewport and then we can manually adjust the color white inside this shading panel here, which is pretty cool. As you can see, if you quickly want to change the background to view your model better, yeah, this is really nice. Then as you can see, we have a new outline option enabled. This allows us to see the separation of the different objects a bit better. So if I disable this, you can see everything is merging better together in the viewport. But in this way you can distinguish all the separate parts a bit better, which I really like. This is just a tiny detail, but it makes a huge difference. And then the best option for sculpting is the cavity option. So if I enable this, two things will be added. Sharp edges will be highlighted and creases, holes, corners, and so on will have a shadow, like an ambient occlusion shadow. And this you can adjust down here. The which is for this highlight of the edges, and the valley is for the shadow, basically, as you can see. So, and with this option, you have much more depth inside the object, so you can see much better if you are drawing a crease over here to see how deep this crease actually is, or how large edges you're creating in sculpt mode. So you can also adjust this even further. For example, you can increase the samples to have a better shadow resolution. You can change the distance to make the shadow bigger or smaller. And this attenuation value basically defines, as far as I understand this, how far the shadow rays will be displayed. Right now, as you can see, if I make this a bit smaller and maybe a bit stronger, you can see we have even shadow over here from the scales, which are pretty far away from the ring on the other side. And if you are increasing this attenuation value, you can see then it will basically create a more realistic shadow, that the shadow is just around the objects and not on the objects which are pretty far away. Let's choose this one over here. Here you can see it even better with the highlights on the edges. And yeah, imagine you would sculpt in this mode. This looks beautiful, and this will help a lot to understand the shape of the object much better. So what else do we have here? One option maybe we can show, it's the shadow option, which is not really meant for sculpting. I think it's just a shadow, not really like a shadow for rendering and so on. It's just a shadow to understand how the objects are interacting with each other. So for example, if you're moving an object closer to the ground, you can actually see how far this object is away from the ground from the shadow which is displayed. But you can see, since this dragon is really high resolution, it's running really slow with this shadow option enabled. So you can also change the opacity of the shadow. And if you click on this, you can also change the direction of the light source. So looks pretty nice, but yeah, as mentioned, for sculpting, I would definitely disable this because it slows down the viewport much, and I think it's not really helpful. So let's just create a new file. Click on File, New, and you can see here we also have a new thing. We can now create new files for different purposes, because we can now also do 2D animation in Blender, or if you're working on a VFX shot or want to just do video editing, you just click on what you want to do. In our case, we want to do General Blender. And now let's add a subsurf modifier quickly. Subdivide this a few times and hit apply. And now let's switch over to sculpt mode. And as you can see, it immediately switches to sculpt mode and we can start sculpting on this. And as you can see, also matte cap, cavity and so on is enabled. So we can just start sculpting, and this is definitely pretty cool and makes it much more convenient to switch to sculpt mode. And now if we want to create something, it's basically exactly the same as in Blender 2.79, except that the user interface is a bit different and a lot of the shortcuts are not working for the brushes, for example. So now let's switch to the clay strips brush, and then we can work here. And if we want to enable dynamic topology, we can do it up here. Let's switch to constant details and check the resolution here, and maybe make this a bit higher. And then we can start working here. So what I really miss is the number shortcuts, because I'm so used to it, and it's I really have to get used to not clicking the numbers up here. So I have to, for example, if I want to have the crease brush, I have to press Shift C or space and then take a look where I can find it. Also, what it is a bit weird that some of the brushes are grouped now, because then you just have to really look where to find them now. But it's still working by pressing Ctrl to invert the brush. You can press Shift for smoothing the brush, then F for increasing the size, Shift F for changing the strength. So this stuff is still working, and I think if you get used to the fact that you have just a certain amount of shortcuts or just press space and use this. I think if you work a little bit with Blender 2.8, you're really quick get used to it. And as mentioned, they probably will change this in the future. So I'm not sure what I'm creating right here. But yeah, as you can see, you already can work in sculpt mode. And as you maybe remember, a few months ago, I made a video and showing the sculpt mode in Blender 2.8. And back then only 2 brushes worked for me. So it was not really possible to create some decent stuff in Blender 2.8 in sculpt mode. But at this point, it's definitely possible. And I'm really excited to see where this is going. So, but in terms of speed, for example, nothing really has changed. I made a quick test with a high subdivided sphere with 3 million triangles, and it was slow in Blender 2.7, and it was also slow in Blender 2.8. So in this direction, I think not much has changed at the moment. Yeah guys, this is how the sculpt mode in Blender 2.8 looks like. So at the moment I'm really happy with the viewport. This looks incredible, it's awesome, it just feels really good. And I'm okay with some of the UI changes. It's probably not the best solution at the moment, but I think they will figure out how to arrange everything so that it's working smoothly. But on the other hand, at least at the moment, I'm a little bit disappointed that from what I've experienced so far, not much has changed inside the sculpt mode at the moment. Certainly I'm aware of the fact that at the moment they don't add new features, they just want to polish everything so that they can release a first stable version of Blender 2.8, and in the future releases they will add new stuff. But I'm not really sure how important the sculpt mode is, because there are other areas in Blender which probably are more important, like the standard edit mode, EV cycles, texturing and all this stuff. But for me, sculpting is important, and I think a lot of other people also would really like to use Blender as main sculpting tool. And at the moment the sculpting in Blender is robust, it works, it's not bad. You can do quite a lot with it if you know the right workflows and techniques, but there's still missing a lot of fine-tune, a lot of smaller and bigger features which are just missing or need to be fixed in one way or another. And that's why I came up with an idea. So if you're in the Blender community, you maybe remember the Code Quest, where they basically collected money to put all the developers together for a few months and push the development of Blender 2.8 further. And I came up with the idea, why can't we do this for one specific feature, in this case the sculpt mode. So my idea is to maybe collect money with crowdfunding, and with this money we can pay one or more developers over a certain amount of time, which will only focus on sculpt mode features, maybe performance. So at the moment this is just an idea where I need your input. So I proposed this idea already to some other awesome Blender dudes, and they are really interested in this project and wanted to support it. And now I want to know from you guys, are you interested in supporting this? And in order to let me know, there are at least 2 things you can do. First of all, you can share your thoughts in the comment section below. And the second thing is, I have created a separate mailing list just for this project. So if you sign up, you just get information about this project if there is something happening. And this also just shows us if a lot of people are interested in this project. So this is just important if we are setting up a crowdfunding campaign, so that we can mail you, and maybe if we have some nice updates about this project, if this is happening, then we can also send you an email. And if you think this is a great idea, share this video, like it, and certainly subscribe to this channel if you love my videos, and don't forget to ring the bell. And by sharing and liking this video, you make sure that many people can see this and give feedback on this idea for improving the sculpt mode. Guys, thanks a lot for watching. Don't forget to grab the 10% off for the Master Car Creation course from Chris Plush, link in the video description. And I will see you in the next video. Goodbye.